thinking about the dominant theoretical viewpoints, or at least very salient theoretical viewpoints currently in language acquisition, there are a couple of important divisions, sort of dimensions, right, that people differ on. And the first is whether they believe in domain-specific knowledge or domain-general knowledge. So domain-specific is going to be linguistic knowledge in the case of language acquisition, specific to the domain of language, or whether whatever knowledge or mechanisms are going on are used for all kinds of learning, right, across cognition, like social things, or auditory things, or things that memory things that have nothing to do with language per se, right, domain general, across domains. Now that's one dimension, domain specific versus domain general. Another is innate versus learned, right, and innate is what it sounds like. There's stuff built in, right, because you are a human, and learned means you are learning from your environment, right? And so if we sort of look on this axis right here, we can go all the way from nothing's innate to a whole bunch of stuff is innate, right? And honestly, it's the same thing true. You can go for, you have domain general stuff, but, nothing is domain specific to a whole bunch of stuff is domain specific, right? So think about those dimensions for a moment. And let's now think about the different sort of names for the viewpoints we've been bandying around. Okay, so if you believe at least one thing is innate and domain-specific, language-specific, you're a linguistic nativist, sometimes called a generativist, right? At least one thing, innate and domain-specific, and there you are, right? So really, that's contrasted with if you believe at least one thing is innate, but nothing is domain-specific, everything is domain-general, zero domain-specific things. You're a non-linguistic nativist because you do not believe in linguistic, right, domain-specific, native, innate knowledge, right? You're a constructionist if you're a non-linguistic nativist. So generativist versus constructionist. So really, in some sense, this axis looks like this, right? You can have nothing domain-specific or at least one thing, all the way up to a whole bunch of stuff, right? If you believe at least one thing is innate and domain-specific, you're a generativist. It's actually pretty easy to be a generativist, right? Versus being a constructionist, you think everything is domain general, nothing is domain-specific. Now let's think about learned versus innate. If you believe at least one thing is innate, guess what? You're a nativist. Versus if you believe nothing is innate, you're an empiricist, right? So 0 versus 1 or more. 0 innate, empiricist. 1 or more things innate, nativist. So again, our axis kind of looks like this. It's pretty easy to be a nativist of some kind and pretty hard to be an empiricist, at least under this view of it, right? And so really in modern times, nobody's an empiricist under this definition, right? So when Chomsky, who's sort of the father of modern linguistics and thinking about language acquisition in a generativist way, when he first proposed that there was a, genetically determined aspect of language acquisition, that is innate language knowledge, it challenged the dominant paradigm called behaviorism, right? So behaviorists argue that all animal and human behaviors, including language, were acquired from the outside by the mind, right? Nothing innate, everything learned, empiricists, which starts out as a blank slate. And today, scientists agree that behaviorism was wrong, right? So nobody's this kind of empiricist, right? And everyone seems to be in agreement that there's an underlying genetically encoded biological machinery, right? Believe that something's innate. Everybody's some kind of nativist, right? And many think the same biology responsible for language is also responsible for other aspects of cognition. So that's going to be the domain general crew, right? But pretty much everyone's a nativist. And then where they really split is, are they a constructionist, a non-linguistic nativist, and they don't believe anything is linguistic that's innate? Or are they a generativist, a linguistic nativist, and they believe at least one thing is linguistic